Who's ready for some gossip? Cabin gossip. Today we're going to go through all of the stories that people have told us about this house. We don't know if any of them are actually true, but we're going to share those stories with you and then kind of walk you through a timeline that we've created of the cabin from when we think the cabin was built and then through to like the family that we purchased it from.
There's a lot of history wrapped up in these stories. There's tales of like witchcraft and sorcery, and it takes you through the Civil War, through the turn of the last century, and really a lot of cool stuff in there.
So to hear these stories, press the like button and subscribe to our channel. Actually, it just really helps us with the YouTube algorithm. So if you do that, that's good for us and we can make more videos that you guys can enjoy. Okay, so when we started working on this cabin, first of all, people hadn't seen the logs in probably over 100 years. So a lot of people were just driving up to the house, checking it out, checking the project out, and they shared a bunch of stories about this county and the people who lived here over the past couple hundred years. We've got a lot of families in this area who lived here generation after generation, so a lot of stories were shared with us about this house.
So rumor number one was that the cabin started as a barn, and we think that there's some pretty good indications that this might actually be true. We're going to show you around outside and kind of walk you through what we think.
Okay, so rumor number two. This cabin was made entirely by women, which is a pretty cool rumor, and like those would be some awesome women if that were true. So we can walk you through some of the things that we've seen outside and kind of the evidence that the cabin has about how this structure could have been put together by women.
And rumor number three is that the cabin was inhabited by witches. And we're not entirely sure what time period people are talking about, but we've had enough people. I mean, it's probably the most popular rumor about the place. We've had so many people come up and tell us that, you know, is that the place where the witches lived? And I don't know what time period they're referring to, but we have some ideas.
Yeah, it's a pretty fun rumor, and like Gabe said, it comes up over and over and over again. So it's definitely one that we're going to address in this video. So come along with us and take the tour. So the very first thing on our timeline is this mark that's carved into the house. So take a look right here on this log right by the front door. You guys can see it. This is an apotropaic mark, so it's kind of like a good luck charm for the house carved into the wood. It's like crossing your fingers for good luck or having like a lucky charm, like a four-leaf clover. So this was to ward off witches. It's called a witch's mark. This mark is probably the Virgo Virginum, which is calling in the Mother Mary or the Virgin Mary to protect the house. So this would just be like a good luck charm. It's supposed to ward off witches. These good luck charms or carvings into the wood ended around the end of the 1700s. So turn of the century, 1800s, people wouldn't use them anymore. So that has helped us to date this cabin.
In addition to the witch mark on the front of the house, we also have some records at the courthouse that go all the way back to the 1770s, 1780s, some of them as early as the 1740s. 1747, I think, might be the oldest one that we found. So again, it doesn't seem unreasonable to think that people were settling in this valley and that people would be building a lot of log structures. Now, as for the building actually being a barn, the evidence for that was really apparent when we took this place apart. And the chimney part was significantly more narrow than the space around it. So like this space right here, about 1.5 feet in on each side was just open space, empty space that was just crammed with, wood, it was crammed with rocks, mud. I mean, basically anything they could cram in there to get the airflow to stop is kind of what they did. And why would they construct a chimney and do that from scratch for the whole structure and make it fit that way? I don't think they would. It was obviously something that was retrofitted to fit something that was already standing. And, you know, at the time, the physics of it dictate for fireplace construction that things are a certain way and dimensions are a particular way. And it's possible that people building that really only had one way to do it. And so they just did it that way and then tried to fill in the gaps on each side as they went to retrofit this to a barn. And we see, you know, when I look back through pictures, you could see different barns for which the opening was about the size and dimensions of the one that we had here. So this seems like something that could be pretty plausible.
Okay, so we just saw where the big opening was for the barn door on the fireplace side, and now we're on the opposite side of the house. I'm going to show you something about the logs on this side. So addressing the second rumor that this was a house that was built only by women. So the barn must have been here for some time, and I want you to look at the notches over here. So this notch that we have here is called a half dovetail. It's a typical notch for Appalachian cabins, and you have to be a pretty skilled carpenter at the time to make this type of notch on the cabin. There is a different type of notch at the top of the cabin. So I'm gonna use my little stick pointer here, And if you look up here, and that log up there, this notch comes to a point at the top. It comes to the point at the top like a house. So this notch was for somebody who was a little bit less skilled. It's called a V notch. And the logs at the top are poplar instead of the chestnut logs that we have here. So chestnut log barn structure with an apotropaic mark, that makes sense. They would have put a good luck charm or a mark on the barn to protect the animals, a big barn door on the other side with that fireplace. And now, you know, maybe around the Civil War time, women are the only ones that are around. They need to convert this into a living space. They take the lighter and smaller logs, the poplar logs, and put them on top of this chestnut barn and convert it into a home instead of a barn. So this is how potentially this rumor got started, that women created this into a house, because obviously moving it from a barn into a house, they built this into a home. Okay, so we've taken you from the late 1700s through the Civil War time, where women might have extended this cabin to make it a house. And so now we're going back to the county courthouse, to the records. And in 1892, the Fields family took over this property. And that's the family who we bought the cabin from. So Ruthie and R.N. Fields raised their 10 children here in this cabin. They homesteaded this land. All of them slept in this loft, altogether 12 people in this tiny one-room house, which is pretty amazing. We bought this property from their grandson, and he was telling us a bunch of stories about the family and how, you know, his father and his uncles inherited bits of the property surrounding this house, and they had orchards, so there was orchards surrounding this property. And he was telling us a story about how his father used to take walks to come back to the cabin, just so he could like nap on the floor, because it was, you know, one of the places that he felt the most home or like most comfortable. So that was like a really sweet memory that he shared with us. Additionally, let's address rumor number 3, the fact that this is a witch's cabin. So in the 1970s, the man who we bought it from, the grandson of Ruthie and RN, he bought the cabin from his family, and he rented the cabin back to his 2 maiden aunts. So there were 2 older unmarried women here living for a long period of time. They lived without running water or electricity because there was no electricity in this county until the 1980s. So these might be the 2 witches in question. Again, we're not really sure of the timeline. I'm sure they were both very lovely people, and I'm not really sure how this rumor got started. But there were definitely 2 women living here for a long time together, and this could be why people started this rumor that was very prevalent and kept coming to us about the 2 witches living in this cabin.
One more important event for this cabin was in 1969 when Hurricane Camille came through, and this dropped 31 inches of rain in less than 5 hours, right over top. I mean, it was just a perfect match for Nelson County, and the water flow from that is said to be 30 feet deep in some places. It washed out 900 buildings, almost 1,000 buildings. Over 100 people lost their lives. It was a major disaster for this area, and it reshaped a lot of the mountainside that's right outside of our cabin. I mean, by the time that everything receded, the road had washed away, and the river had shifted over towards the cabin, so now the road had to be built on a different side of the river entirely. So what we have today did not look like that at all, apparently, before 1969. And it also washed away several feet of topsoil from the bottom of our land, and so the orchard that was here washed away. And that is something that, I mean, we find it encouraging that an orchard was here to begin with, but it's also in our plans to turn this into an orchard once again someday. It feels kind of good that that was a part of his history that we're going to be rekindling along with the, you know, original structure of the log cabin.
Yeah, it's also a really interesting fact that this house itself survived basically an enormous flood. So 900 buildings in this county were washed away, and this log cabin is still here. So another reason why this cabin is really precious to us, why we feel like it's really important to preserve this little bit of history. It's a really special place to us, but I also feel like it's just a special place for the county.
Okay, that wraps up our cabin origin story. Don't forget to give us a like, subscribe to our channel, and we will see you next time. Thanks for watching.
Bye!